Alright, so we are just a few days away from Lighter finally getting his rerun banner for Zenless Zone Zero, and Lighter is still a very good stun character. So today I want to give a quick recap of what Lighter can do, and then we're going to talk about his overall value in the current state of the game to see whether or not you should pull for him on this rerun banner. So starting out with our kit recap here, there's two main things I want to touch on for Lighter, which really just encompass the main way he works. The first one of these is going to be his morale resource. So Lighter will passively gain 2.9 morale per second, and his morale can cap out at 100. He also will get extra morale when any ally uses energy as well, so this will be a nice way to fill up that meter a lot faster. For Lighter, you do want to get it to at least 80 morale. If you can get up to 100, it'll be better, but at the very least, if you have at least 80 morale, Lighter will be able to trigger a quick assist the next time he swaps in, and whenever you have at least 80 morale, using the 5th hit of his basic attack will allow you to enter the morale burst state, which is where he's going to be the most useful when it comes to applying daze and actually stunning enemies. When Lighter enters the morale burst state, he's going to enhance that 5th hit of his basic attack, and now when you use it, it's going to consume morale as the attack hits the enemy. Every time you consume 10 morale during this, Lighter's going to get a 2% impact buff for 6 seconds, and this maxes out at 20%, meaning that if you have the full 100 morale meter when you go into the morale burst state, then you're going to get the maximum buff out of this, and you're going to see a lot of extra days go on the enemy, which is really good. Additionally, anytime Lighter hits an enemy with the morale burst up, he's going to lower their ice and fire resistance by 15% for 30 seconds, which is really good as well, so that not only will he do a bit of extra damage, but also pairing him with a ice or fire DPS, they'll be able to do more damage as well, especially once you get that stun on them. And speaking of the stun, the last hit of the enhanced 5th hit of the basic attack will apply the collapse effect to the enemy. And this effect makes it so that the next time that enemy is stunned, the stun duration will increase by 3 seconds. And this is helpful pretty much for any kind of DPS you would use with Lighter, because you're going to be able to get a bit more damage in, which is going to be really good overall. And the morale burst state will end upon the morale meter being depleted, or if Lighter swaps out of the field. So pretty much you're going to want to get up to the 100 morale, swap him in, activate the morale burst state, use it all up to either get a stun or get really close, and then you're going to want to swap him out and sort of rinse and repeat there. Then the other part of his kit that I wanted to touch on here is his additional ability. Now the condition to activate it is to have another attack character or another Sons of Caledon character on the team. So this should be pretty easy to get because you will run a stunner with most attack characters, and then if you really need the Sons of Caledon one instead, you can just run Lucy. She's going to be a good support regardless of what team you're running her on. But with this additional ability here, every hit of the 5th hit of the basic attack will give all allies 1 stack of Elation for 30 seconds. And each of these stacks will give a 1.25% ice and fire damage buff. And this can stack up to 20 times, making it at max a 25% ice and fire damage buff, making Lighter really good for any ice or fire attack characters. And if Lighter has over 170 impact, the buff of Elation is going to increase by 0.25% per 10 impact you have above 170, making these extra damage buffs even more potent. And the max buff that you can get from the Elation because of this is now going to increase to 75% ice and fire damage as opposed to the original 25%. So depending on how high you can get his impact, you can see some really crazy damage buffs from this. And anytime you use a chain attack, it's going to refresh the duration of the Elation stacks as well, giving you a bit more uptime on those buffs. So those are the main parts of Lighter's kit there. So now let's talk about what I think about if he is still good in the game and just like his overall current standing in the state of Zenless Zone Zero right now. So I think in terms of stunners, he's definitely like top 2 stunners in the game right now, him and Trigger. And I do think that his stun duration increases are very good. It leads to a lot more damage potential, especially for attack characters who, a lot of them will like the burst windows that you get from the stun window. So having that be a bit longer, even just 3 seconds, does give them a bit more, hits in to get some extra damage. Now, when you do run lighter, you do need to pay attention to that morale resource, because without that morale burst state, you're not really going to be getting that much days off with him, and you would be having much less stuns go off if you're not playing that resource properly. I do think he has some really great synergy with a lot of ice and fire DPS characters. He's going to work very well with Hugo, with Evelyn, if you're running Ellen, if you're running Soldier 11. Those characters will be able to benefit a lot from lighter, with the res decreases for ice and fire, as well as the buffs he gives through the additional ability. Now, the one thing to keep an eye out for if you're thinking about lighter is that in 2.0 we are getting Jufufu, who is also a fire stun character. Now, it is very possible, since we don't have her kit info yet, it is possible that she could play very differently from lighter, maybe not give certain buffs, but could be better in some other aspects. So I would say it's something to keep an eye on for, but even if Jufufu is a better stun character than lighter, that doesn't mean lighter is going to be bad by any means, because I do think that the buffs he gives, as well as those res decreases for ice and fire, make lighter a very solid option, and I do think it is pretty tough to power creep that, given the way that Zenless has treated their characters when it comes to buffs. So now let's talk about whether or not I think you should pull for lighter on this rerun banner. So I think if you're someone who uses an ice or fire DPS that can benefit from stuns, which will mainly be the attack specialty characters, I think lighter is a really amazing pull for you, because of all of the buffs he gives, plus you're going to get some pretty consistent stunning, so long as you do play around his morale meter. But I think if you're someone who isn't really using ice or fire attack characters, I think there definitely are going to be stunners that may fit those characters a bit better than lighter does, since he is kind of fit into the ice and fire kind of archetypes there. But I do think that, yeah, you'll probably have some better options if you don't have an ice or fire DPS, but if you do, I think right now he is the best in slot stunner for those types of attack characters. So that's overall what I think for if it's your first time getting lighter, if you don't have any copies of him at all. But I do also want to talk to people who already have lighter and are thinking about vertically investing, whether it be to get his W engine, to get a Mindscape. So let's talk about all that here. I think overall, if you're deciding between his W engine or M1, I think the W engine is going to be the better investment. So with the W engine, you're going to be able to get 25% impact for 8 seconds whenever you use a quick assist or perfect assist. And this is really good because it's anytime you either parry, or if you even activate that quick assist through his morale mechanic there, then you're going to be able to get some extra impact. And if you pair that up with that morale burst state, you're going to be able to get some pretty solid days on the enemy. And anytime you hit an enemy with the basic attack, you're going to apply the wilt status to them for 30 seconds. This can stack up to 20 times, and every stack will give 1.5% extra crit damage from any fire or ice damage attack that hits the enemy. And this is a max of 30% for this buff, so you can get even more damage for those fire and ice DPSs. And because this W engine also has impact as its main stat, this also is a massive help to get up to that really high 170 impact to be able to get the most out of his kit. Now to compare that to the M1 here, the M1 really just gives us some extra core passive buffs. Firstly, the stun duration increase goes from 3 seconds to 5 seconds, which is definitely nice to get a little bit more damage in. The ice and fire res debuff percent does change, which is probably the most beneficial thing on the M1 here, where the res decrease goes from 15% to 30%. Which is a really nice increase there. You're pairing that with the buffs as well that you get through the additional ability. This is going to be pretty impactful, I'd say. But then lastly, for the core passive, you get an extra 30% damage on the finisher hit of the 5th hit of the basic attack whenever the morale state is depleted. So overall, like some solid stuff in M1, but I think if you want to get the most value and you only have the resources to pull for one, either M1 or the W engine, I would say go for the W engine, because you do get a lot of not only extra damage, but you also get some more comfortability with the build because of the extra impact you get. And then lastly, I also want to touch on really quickly the other mindscapes here, because if you're someone who wants to spend a bit more on the game, which is totally fine, I want to have that info there for you guys. So Lighter's M2 here, It's going to give an extra 25% stun damage multiplier on enemies that have the collapse state, which is the state that increases the stun duration. So that'll also be really good there. And the additional abilities Ice and Fire damage buff maximum will be increased to 120% of the original. So you can get even more extra damage there for those Fire and Ice DPS characters, which is pretty solid there for M2. Then for his M4, the ally characters that are on the field while he's off field are going to get a 10% energy regen buff, which is really good because you do want your allies to consume energy to give him back his morale even faster. And anytime Lighter enters the morale burst state, once per 18 seconds, any off-field character will gain 4 energy. So this is also good just to increase the amount of energy the allies are getting so that Lighter can go into the state more consistently. Then lastly, at M6, the recovery efficiency of morale is going to be increased to 200% of the original value, which is going to make it even faster to get into morale and just apply all of that daze and get that stun. Then M6 also has a few other like damage increases in the kit as well, which is just like a nice little bonus for if you're going all the way up to M6. But the big takeaway is that morale recovery efficiency bonus. So that is everything there for Lighter. I definitely think he is still a very valuable character, and a lot of players, especially if you're pulling for Hugo or if you pulled for Evelyn but don't have Lighter, I think you're going to benefit a ton from having him on the team. So let me know what you all think down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed and want to see more content from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But with that, everyone, I will see you all next time.